Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Reel Chums. I'm your host, Marcel, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Danny.
In this week's episode, we're going to discuss the 1997 Studio Ghibli film Princess Mononoke. We are also accompanied by a special guest, Derick McDuff of the Underrated podcast. Welcome, Derick.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here and to talk about this film with you.
Yeah, no, Derick, we're super excited to have you join us. I know it took some coordinating on our part, but I'm glad our schedules kind of lined up. And thank you so much for making time to be with us.
And more importantly, I actually want to thank you for recommending this or saying that this is the film you wanted to watch, because this is one that's been on my to-watch list for a long time.
So you've never seen it?
I had never seen it. I've
wow.
seen I think 3 of the other Ghibli films
Mm-hmm.
that they've produced. So this was a real treat for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
and this
awesome.
is my first time watching it as well. I've only seen Kiki's Delivery Service, which I love. So this is my first time too. So thank you for suggesting this. We'll get into why you like this movie.
Yeah.
But for our listeners, Derick, would love for you to just do a quick intro, who you are, a little bit about yourself, your podcast as well, just so that they know where you're coming from.
Yeah, thank you. Like you guys are saying, I'm one of the hosts and I'm also the producer of the Underrated podcast. Like you guys, we're a film podcast, and we focus kind of on the movies that more people should watch, things that are a little bit underseen or under the radar. 'Cause it's one of my favorite things to introduce people to movies that they really should watch and haven't for whatever reason. So honestly, hearing that you guys haven't seen this movie, I'm so excited to talk about it with you guys. But yeah, that's us over on Underrated. We're on all the same podcast websites. If you just look up like Undercast Company, that's the name that me and my friends use when we do podcasts. It should come right up on whatever podcast app you're listening to. And yeah, I'm a film critic, work for just freelance for places like WatchMojo.com and stuff like that in my spare time when I'm not doing my day job.
All right. Well, we'll make sure to leave all your stuff in the description down below. We normally start this podcast with a question of the day or a question of the episode, I guess. And sometimes we do a would you rather, and sometimes we do just like a random question. Today, I think we're going to do a would you rather. So, would you rather be like a character or in the world of Princess Mononoke or Kiki's Delivery Service?
I feel like Kiki's would be nice. Kiki's is just like a nice kind of quaint like 1800s European town with magic. If I lived in Princess Mononoke, I would be dead. I would absolutely not last a week in that world. Like a forest spirit or like some like crazy monk or something something would kill me without question, or like a wolf. I don't know what I would not last though. But if I can just like go and like where the worst thing that happens is there's like a traffic accident because somebody gets stuck on a broom, that's fine. That's the world I would love to
You
live
can
in.
handle that. You can handle that for sure.
I think for me, it would be cool though to like be in Princess Mononoke.
Mhm.
100%, you're right. I would die, but like the ability to like, I feel like everyone in that environment is very like skilled in something, and just to like talk to like the gods would be so cool, right?
Yeah.
I think that'd be
Yeah.
fun. I would like that.
It would
not
be
last
beautiful.
very long, but yeah, it would be
Yes.
cool. That
Yeah,
short
it wouldn't
life would
be
awesome.
it wouldn't be a long time living there, but it would be a very nice time, like getting to see all that beautiful beauty.
Oh man, I was actually you bring up some great points, Derick. Marcel, you also bring some good points. Honestly, for me, I probably also would be in Mononoke, and I would either be some sort of like weird traveling guy that just cooks for people so that I don't die, because they're like, well, if he dies, then we don't have any food. Or I always want to hang on to the place where all the ladies are like, "What's up, guys?" I just thought that was such a fun like dynamic. I just think I will say though, every time I watch Kiki, I just think about like uh, riding a broom, and then I think about Quidditch, and I feel like people who are in Kiki's delivery service would just probably really just be great. I would love to see them play Quidditch. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool.
I can dig that. I can appreciate it. Perfect. Well, let's jump into this. We, as part of having a guest speaker, or a guest speaker, a guest on our podcast, is we like to ask them what to choose a movie that we're going to discuss, but a movie that has shaped them, influenced them, etc. We did that on our first episode. I chose a movie that shaped my love for cinema, whereas Danny, you chose a movie that shaped you in a very crucial time of like your teenage years
Yeah.
and like the person, the man that you are today,
Yeah.
right? So it can be whatever way. We asked that same question for you, Derek, and you chose Princess Mononoke. And we kind of want to start with your experience with this movie, why you chose this movie, and yeah, just kind of give us a little bit of context there.
Yeah, so this was a really good question when you asked me, and when I did have to kind of think about it for a little. My initial thought was I actually had the same answer of you out the bat, where I was like Jurassic Park from a very young age, just kind of formed my brain into loving cinema. So I can always take that because it was already taken, but also I think that Mononoke is probably a better choice for me. Both are very influential, but I watched this one first in high school. I was probably about 15 or 16. So I was really becoming the person that I would
Yeah.
be.
Yep.
And, just like Jurassic Park shaped both of our loves for cinema, this kind of made me into the kind of storyteller that I am today because I'm also like a writer. I do write some fiction and fantasy and stuff like that. And the complexity of this story I thought was so interesting and phenomenal and just kind of rewired my brain in a way where it's like we've all seen movies that are like environmental messages, and I'm all for those,
Mhm.
going back to my childhood stuff like Ferngully, but then you have stuff like later on like Wall-E or Avatar, all that good stuff. But this is really much more complex than that because, like a lot of Miyazaki's movies, this is very much say pro environment, but it's also saying it's not just like a blanket like nature good. It's so much more than it. It's like we have to find a way to live in balance with nature. People and nature are both sides of the coin, and when one side becomes too weighted down, things get out of whack. And that's another thing too. It's like you watch this movie, by like this is in the past. By the time we're living in quote unquote today, the forest spirits are all gone. All the old gods are dead. So we're seeing them like the last gasps of this, and just every character in it is so interesting and complex. I wouldn't even say there's a real antagonist in this. There's just different
Yeah.
points of view. Even like somebody like Lady Eboshi, who is probably the closest to an antagonist that you actually see in the movie. There's some off-screen characters like a Lord Asano that are maybe more antagonistic, but she is so interesting. It's like, yeah, she's doing things that are destroying the forest, but she's also helping the people. She's helping
Yeah.
lepers. She's helping these women who like she's giving them actual jobs when they were forced to work as prostitutes before.
Right.
Like
Right.
it's and then her like fight with Saw and like everything you can really find just why watch this movie over and over and over again. And I feel like literally every time I watch it, I catch something new, and it's just really shaped me in the way that I want to both consume and tell interesting, complex stories that are not morally clear, that make you stop and think, what is the right thing to do here? What is the right course of action? And to look at not just, people you agree with, but people you don't agree with, and see what is the other thing going on over here. And just also just the way I watch this is like movies can look like this. I'd seen plenty of beautiful animation before this, but I'd never seen anything like this where
Yeah.
it just looked like a moving painting. And my brain processing that as a teenager was like, wow, the things that we can see are just endless, and
You
and
know,
I
Derek.
I, I loved it.
I love that.
Yeah, I can feel your passion for it, and you know what? I'm I don't watch these. I don't watch the Ghibli movies enough. I'll be honest with you. I think um who's the creator again?
Hayao Miyazaki,
Yeah,
he's the director of a lot of them, including this
yeah.
one.
So I mean, this studio period, like even at the time, 1997. If we think about 1997, I didn't actually look this up. I wanted to, but I wanted to see what other movies came out at this time.
I looked that up.
What is it?
The biggest movie of '97 was Disney's Hercules.
Hercules was the biggest
Hercules.
one.
Okay,
Well,
and
Titanic.
Anastasia. Yes,
Oh
yes,
well,
yes.
well, Titanic,
Yeah,
but I
Yes,
mean, we're talking about like
animated.
animated movies.
animated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Animated. So you have
Was when was
Hercules.
Mulan?
Mulan was
I think in
90, 99.
99. Yeah, it was
Okay.
later in the 90s, or maybe even 98. It might have been the next year.
But yeah, you had Hercules, Disney's Hercules, and you had, I think it was Fox that released Anastasia.
Yeah,
Hmm.
So those are kind of the bigger animated films of '97.
but I think about those films. I was reminded like the talent alone that goes into making this type of animated film is truly a skill set that will never go out of style, nor should it. And like I think even now with like today with AI and what AI is providing like new creators, I still think that nothing will ever compete with what they did or what they're doing in the style of animation that they're doing with these films. They are beautiful, like you said, it's like a painting. Like I think when I watch this, I'm like, "Oh, man, like this is it is not, it wasn't. I mean, there's the you can say to some degree, like, some animations or Disney or Pixar, they try to push the boundary and try to push like what you can do with animation, and that's fantastic, and I think that's definitely there. Honestly, I would love to see more people do stuff like this, or even what came to mind was actually the Mitchells movie. There's
Oh,
a
the Mitchells
Netflix
versus the Machines. Yeah.
Mitchells versus Machines. They that also had a very unique, I mean, we think about. I mean, I think Spider-Man gets touted as like the like fight against Pixar's like standard animation style, but I feel like these are the animated films that like I really appreciate because it's people just doing their own flavor in a medium that can be easily just replicated from some like Pixar and Disney.
Yeah, and along with that, I love, Derek, that you mentioned that it's a moving painting, right?
Yeah,
I mean, this it came out in '97, but it didn't make its way to the United States until '99 once
Right.
Miramax and the
yeah,
Weinsteins kind of helped distribute that, right? So looking even at like movies in '99, like this moving painting is just so amazing to see. And you brought up like the complexity of the themes and the characters. I think for me, like growing up, animation was just like, oh yeah, Hercules, right?
Mhm.
The Mulans of the world. And I actually, and Danny and we've talked about this. I wasn't a big animated fan growing up. Like I think I had seen like 4 Disney movies by the age of 21. Um, and so like seeing the complexity of the themes it presents, but of the characters as well.
Yeah.
That's what I love about this, about Ghibli in general, but
yeah,
especially Princess Mononoke. Like being able to contrast these characters to other Studio Ghibli movies. I feel like, and I could be wrong. You guys have watched more of these, but like Princess Mononoke kind of stands on its own just because it's kind of like the middle point. After this, then you get House Moving Castle,
yeah,
and you get more of like, I don't want to say CGI, but more influence from the CGI animation, right? And then before this, you had the classic Ghibli ones. So it's a perfect movie that's just kind of right in the middle of the
yeah,
Ghibli
yeah.
set of movies.
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting point you make, Marcel, because it really is like this is the first time Miyazaki, he's very old school, very much like
Yeah,
everything should be traditionally done and stuff like that.
yeah,
But there's some stuff that you like cannot do with that, like tracking shots and stuff like that are just
right.
impossible to do animated. And so this is the first time when he allowed some of those digital elements into the movie, the digital animation. And to a trained eye, you can see them. But like really you're not, unless you're like looking for them, you're not going to see a lot of this stuff.
Right.
And so it's just there. It's the same thing as like Jurassic Park, where it's they use it sparingly. They just use it as a tool when they need to, and they don't rely on it. It's and even the later Ghiblis might like kind of lean into them a little more, but animation as a whole has really gone away from this hand drawn style, which is a shame. And
Yeah.
yeah, getting to see it here at this point, but still there's elements from what animation would become. Like you said, like that's a very good point. I think of like this is kind of a nexus point in
Mhm.
the history of animated film.
Yeah.
Now, I don't. I if I remember correctly, I feel like um that the Ghibli they were gonna do a couple more films, or at least one more. Um, like that someone was that I can never say his name.
Miyazaki.
Miyazaki.
Miyazaki was gonna come out of retirement and do one other film, but I
So yeah,
don't.
so it's interesting because this is his first retire. He retires more than Michael Jordan. Like this was his first retirement. He was like, this is gonna be my last movie, and then
Yeah.
he's like, just kidding, I can't stay retired. And he came back and he did a few more films, and then he retired again with The Wind Rises, and
Yep.
he's coming out of it again to do How Do You Live. So I think I might have even missed a retirement, but he just keep because he's one of those guys who just can't stay away and he just has to. He loves it so much, you know.
And he's in his 80s, like
Yeah.
amazing to
Yeah.
like still have that creativity itch within you, right?
Yeah,
But also like incorporate like your, I don't want to say traditional way of animation, but just having mastered that way
Yeah.
of animation. I think it's incredible. Kudos to the guy.
All these Ghibli films, but I think particularly this one. Anyone who watches this film will forever be in love with and want to watch all the other films because it's beautiful. Especially, obviously you're a little bit younger. I mean, it's PG-13 for a reason. But even then, like, like you watch this, you're like intrigued by the art, by the characters, which have some amazing stuff. I want to get into them. Also like the voice actors for this film were some
Yeah.
top name voice actors from America that I forget about. And but to me, I think like these films are so good that anyone at any for the next several for years to come will always come and at some point will be like will be these underrated films. Derek, like they're gonna be like, hey, have you seen this movie? Like I without a doubt will like I will probably watch we do movie nights on Fridays with my family. And on my turn to pick a movie, I'm probably gonna do Kiki's delivery service because it's a wonderful one to introduce my kids to.
Yeah.
yeah. No, that's it.
Anyways,
I was just gonna say that's kind of like a perfect segue to. I wanted to mention how because that happened to me where like I said I watched this movie when I was 15 or 16 and I remember it was my one of my best friends was part of the Japanese club and they were doing a we had like this weird split campus where like there was like a hill you had to go up to and go to like the upper campus it was called and so they were doing like a movie night up there so I walked up to the upper campus and watched it on this like outdoor screen and I was like,
Wow.
"Oh my!" It like blew my mind. It changed me forever. And I was like, "Well, now I have to watch all of these. I have to." And I haven't seen all the Ghibli stuff, but I've seen all of the Hayao Miyazaki directed ones. And like they had a couple more movie nights, and I went into it being like, I know these are going to be incredible, but there's no way they can possibly recapture the magic of Mononoke because it's just for me specifically so perfect and just about everything that I love and just you know just like I said, just molded my brain like Play-Doh, and you can only do that so many times.
yeah,
But I did go back and watch like Kiki and the rest of these, and over the next, you know, probably 10 years, I went through and watched his entire filmography because I was just like, this is it, this is my guy. There's some really, if you are interested in his like process and everything, there's a couple really interesting documentaries. I think they're both on HBO Max about him. I got to go to the Academy Museum down in LA for a couple months last year was doing this exhibit on him. You couldn't even take pictures or anything. I got to check that out.
wow,
Phenomenal. Like that museum was cool, but like I'm really bummed that that wing was only temporary because they've taken it out now. It was just a temporary thing. But yeah, it was so cool and just he's just kind of this insane perfectionist guy, like a lot of these animators are. So
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I was so on board once watching this movie.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I
yeah,
think for me, this is my first time watching it.
yeah. Me too.
And as a 30 something year old watching it for the first time, I can attest to that. Yes, like I'm going to watch more of these. Like I'm adding them to our family movie night. Like let's do it. Like I was telling Daddy, I saw Kiki's. It's been at least a decade since I've seen it, and I just fell in love with it, but I just never revisited. And now after watching Mononoke, it's like I have fallen in love again, and let's do it. So I can attest to that. But I kind of want to dig a little bit. I love something that you mentioned, Derek, was the characters, right? And for me, I just love Lady Eboshi. You
Yeah.
bring up this point that like there she's the closest thing that we have to like an antagonist in this film. And that's what's so complex about this movie is that we don't really have a very clear defined villain, right? It's different perspectives, it's points of views, it's objectives and what they're trying to accomplish. And for me, like at first when we're introduced to Lady Eboshi and she's shooting down the wolves and San, you're like, man, like how dare she?
Yeah.
But then as you get into like Irontown and you see what she's doing, for me I had a complete shift and I was like, I kind of see where she's coming from. I get this.
It's funny you say that, Marcel, because like when watching this, and because I also watched this for the first time, for me, I felt as I was watching the characters how much it's just a matter of circumstance,
Hmm.
and but the key to all of it is how much that like we get so caught up in trying be to provide something better that we forget that there can be a balance. um, it doesn't mean you have to go all in on this one thing or never have that at all. I mean, I get for whatever reason, AI is coming to my mind because like it's been in my realm and everything. But like people are like, AI is going to ruin creativity, or like I never want to touch it. Or people are like, oh, I want to do everything with AI. But really, there can be a balance in nature, in our lives, in what we. Is there sacrifices? Absolutely, right. But do they have to be the hardest of sacrifices by like destroying the whole forest?
Hmm.
I love that because one of my notes and one of the themes I feel like caught at this time was technology versus nature,
Hmm.
right? And I think the movie does a great job exploring the tension between technology and nature, obviously, but it depicts a very unique conflict. You talk about balance, right? You bring up AI. In this case, it's this industrial revolution almost that they're
Hmm.
having. Um, but I love these opposing forces, and you have obviously Mononoke, the forest gods, and then Lady Eboshi, who embody these two opposing forces. But at what cost of technological progress are we going to have? What's that impact, and at what cost are we experiencing it? In our case, maybe AI, right? But I think these are very crucial themes. Like, what are we willing to sacrifice, and what is the cost that that's going to give us?
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one thing that the film touches on a lot. It's like, yeah, technology in itself is not a bad thing as long as it's not overwhelming the rest of the natural world. It's not destroying things. Technology on its own, Irontown itself is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
But when Irontown is going out and trying to destroy the forest and kill the forest god and kill the monkeys and all this stuff, that's when it becomes dangerous. That's when, and by the end, the forest comes and takes it back, and the forest and you see the forge burning at the end, and nature kind of reclaims it, and a balance is at least temporarily restored for a bit. And I think that's a really cool message for the film to end on.
Yeah. Along with that, I think the impacts of war and violence, right?
Hmm.
In this case, yeah, it's not bad to have progress, right? If we can find that balance. But when we introduce these themes of war and violence, that's when the greatest consequences and impacts in this story take place, right?
Hmm.
And we see that with the characters, the cost of violence, and I want to talk a little bit about that, especially with this movie, right? Let's kind of in context with 1997 and 1999, you weren't really seeing animated films that had these themes of war, of violence. For me, when I was watching that first scene with um, with the demon possessed old boar, right?
Mhm.
And he is just going at it. Or actually, no, it's the other scene after he has left the village and he comes across a town and
Yeah.
he's with the bow and arrow and he loses control and like the decapitated head just goes flying. I was like, okay, yeah, we're going this way. I like it. Like, it's interesting though. Like, I love these. I love the way that the movie presents violence in this environment. Thoughts on that?
This film does a, like we're saying, a really good job with it, and it shows something that you can really only do in film, and particularly animated film does this really well, where they are using visual language and metaphor to kind of portray this hatred and violence growing, particularly with Ashitaka. When at first, like when that boar first attacks, he tries to find a peaceful solution, and he is not able to come to a peaceful solution, so he has to resort to violence. And whether or not you think that is um, merited or not, like that violence is justified, he still chooses that violence, and it leaves a physical mark on him. And just like people who choose violence, a lot of times he's trying to find a way to kind of pacify that from himself. But then he ends up choosing violence again and again, and every single time that he does, you see this mark grow. And every time he chooses hatred or malice, he's something that is against his nature. It kind of grows, and this disease that you see literally on his body, this curse spreads more and more across him. And I think one of the greatest shots in the entire film, and it's like a rad scene, it's like really cool when they hit Yakul and you just like the archer hits Yakul, his elk, and he's like mad. He's like, all right, and he starts
Mm-hmm.
taking these guys out. And there's that one shot of his hand where he's like grabs his sword, and you just see he's wearing the full gloves, and it just kind of creeps in above it.
Yeah.
I think that like visual storytelling is so powerful. It gave me chills because you're just like, wow, this is this dude who is at his core a pacifist, but is resorting to these means. And he maybe has no other choice. Maybe there's nothing else he can possibly do in this situation. But that doesn't matter because it is still going to have this effect on both him and the world around him for the worse.
To me, um, Ashitaka, his his whole clan, his whole his who he is, his identity is such a unique character.
Mhm.
I mean, the movie is called Princess Mononoke, but we follow Ashitaka. And I honestly, so I actually had a question. Why do you think that is?
I think a couple of reasons. You talk about how his clan, his tribe, is what makes up who he is. But this is an isolated group
Yeah, they're
who
like a legend.
they're a legend,
Mhm.
right? To the rest of the country, right?
Yeah.
They're isolated. There is no outside forces bringing conflict, or not even bringing conflict, but testing their ideals,
Mm.
testing their values. So for Ashitaka to be shunned out, to go into the world, so to speak, and to actually have to put into practice what his tribe, what his clan, what they stand for, and Princess Mononoke being the vessel to drive that part of the story. I think that's why she is what's driving and perhaps challenging Ashitaka at times
Mm.
to really evaluate and say, am I a pacifist? Am I going to allow myself to fall into the anger, into the hatred? Whereas he looks into San Mononoke, and she is the one that her path is what's helping him define himself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I
I think so. That's really well put.
but Ashitaka has such an interesting because he goes to Lady Eboshi and he gets involved with the female workers. She takes him to her secret of having the lepers and her and him working through, but at the same time, like you said, like having Princess San be this character that is helping him define that, but him also being a character that like wants, like, finding this line of being new to this, like coming into this perspective with this like end termination of like, I'm going to hate the world and I'm going to try to destroy it, but I'm going to try to figure out what is it, what can I do, what's the line? um oh man, I didn't write it down because I was watching it on my phone doing some other stuff.
Is it to see with eyes unclouded by hate?
There you
Oh my
go.
Oh
gosh,
yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah.
that
Such a good
line.
line. Such a good line.
I
Yeah,
couldn't remember it because
and
I'm the
I think
trash.
I think, like, to answer your question, and it harkens back to what we were talking about earlier about balance, because like you're saying, he is from this isolated tribe that had been in the past devastated by violence, and they're the kind of just this isolated remnant of it, and he is really just kind of this middle path where he's from a society, and so he's not out in nature like Son and the wolves. He
Mhm.
has been raised as a human, but it's not, he's not part of the wider world. He's in this middle ground, and I think he really fits as this personification of the balance that the film is
Hmm.
trying to hit, because on one side you have Eboshi, who is kind of representative of the new world and quote unquote progress, and then you have San, who is a human but is from this older world, this kind of oldness that is trying to hang on. And I love how even the movie ends with, yeah, she's still going to live in the forest. He'll live in Irontown. But he is the middle line. He is the
Yeah.
bridge between. He wants to. They Boshi and or Boshi and San keep talking about how they're enemies and stuff like that, and people keep saying about him throughout the whole movie. Like, that's something I noticed this time watching, is people keep being like, "Oh, you're on their side. You're on."
Mhm.
Like the
Yeah.
Oboshi will be like, "Oh, you're on this side," and San will be like, "I knew you were on their side." And his whole thing is he's like not on anyone's side. He's just trying to help everyone, but people keep trying to pigeonhole himself and seeing him as like, oh, you're closer to them than you are to me, when he's really in the middle. So I thought that that's probably the reason why he's just kind of the central figure in it.
I'm just going back to that line.
I love that. No, and what's so great about that line, he tells it to Lady Eboshi, right?
Mhm.
He's in Irontown, and this is right before she shows him the garden,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And she asks, like, what do you plan to do? Why are you here? And that's when he says, to see with eyes unclouded by hate. She laughs at him a bit, and she says, okay, sure.
I'll
Let
show
me
you
let
show
me show you my
my
secrets,
secrets.
Mhm.
right? And so you have this Lady Eboshi, man. I just love her. But
Yeah.
like she has this approach of like, sure, I am here to protect my people. Let me show you why I'm here and what I'm trying to achieve and why I not necessarily want to destroy, but why I want to provide progress for humans.
Mhm.
One thing that's really, I think, intriguing about this film is that we have this this theater of of the nature and the trees and the old, like the spirits, the nature spirits that are there and that are dying, but we don't like, there's also this whole other battle of like that we don't ever touch on in the film, on the fact that like there are samurais with armor that they're trying to pierce that like are in progress. Their whole other there's some other world there that is made bigger progress that has impacted Lady Eboshi. And what's the little guy's name that Thornton, is it
Oh,
Thornton?
Billy Bob Thornton, yeah,
Yeah.
plays in, yeah, the dub. I think his character's name is
Jiro,
Jiro.
Zero, yeah, something like
something
that.
like that.
Who's his little like wood shoes that can run like a rabbit. Um,
I love those shoes.
I know, but even having his role in the sense that like he's this other party that has a way big some other agenda that he's like, if you're gonna kill a god, let someone else do your dirty work. That he is in a different spot where Iboshi is clouded and she just wants to make progress because she hates some other's thing. Whereas Ashitaka hasn't had hatred. He's trying to figure out, and he's been forced to feel like, okay, well, what is it that's happening? What can I do before I can no longer have a choice? And To me, as I was watching this, no, like the people who like Son, um, Billy Bob Thornton's character, Lady Boshi, and even Ashitaka all have something that have external that may have happened to them that put them in some sort of path for where they are. But you look at like the people of Irontown, and they're happy and they just want to live and they want to protect their home, their family. You look at the spirits, the gorillas, who have conflict with the wolves, and they're like, "Look, we just want to be able to protect our home, and you're causing conflict with that." How much that same sort of technology versus nature, or the hatred and anger and love and compassion, is always this tug of war in this film, and how even in our lives, like people who you're around have such a huge impact on where your eyes are being clouded. And whether that be very hatred or depression or any other sort of aspect in that thing, to me that's one of those things I think I was really impacted by what for this first time.
I like that you mentioned that. I think for me, the movie shows how acts of kindness and empathy can overcome hate and violence,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
And we see how Ashitaka's ability to carry the wounded soldiers back to Irontown makes everyone just fall in love with them, right? And it allows also for like Lady Eboshi to like say, "Hey, thank you. Like, I'm intrigued by what you're doing," um, and it opens up a door for further conversation, further discussion, and I just love that in the movie that even at the end, right? It's just that a deep understanding of others. And I think for Ashitaka, had he not seen the details and the depth of Irontown, I don't think he would have felt that way towards the end. Right? It's when you make that effort to have a deep understanding of others, even those who at times we perceive as enemies or antagonists, that's when it can lead us to a peaceful resolution of ideals, of conflicts, of whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when he runs out there to kind of rejoin the fight, he's after the that big battle has taken place. He's not going out there to try and fight anyone. He's going out there because he's like, Lady Eboshi, your town is under attack by samurai. You need to help them. And she has that line of like, "Why should I believe you?" He's like, "What are you talking about? Like, I'm out here trying to help you." And everyone's just kind of like, "What is this guy's motivation?" And you just see, like you said, the kindness and empathy come through him, and that's one thing I love about this movie is it just kind of shows that there's these effects of this kindness that ripple out to beyond what you can even see. And I didn't even catch this one moment until probably 10 or so times I'd seen it, because it was like it's a blink and you'll miss it moment. That's something I love about this movie. There's just so many details in it. But after they have this moment of empathy where they're like returning the head, and you see just the curse spilling down them, and you're like, oh my god, like he's been trying this whole, that's the whole reason he even came here, was to try and get rid of this curse, and now he's covered in it. But he lifts up the head in this very selfless act, and then that not only cures him but kind of like cures everything. They like there's one of the lepers you see unwraps their bandages, looks at their hand, the lepers
Yeah.
are cured. Like it's
Yeah.
so it's just so cool how much is in this movie, and it just shows that these little things that you do that might seem insignificant or even are big have all of these effects going down the line that you can't even predict.
I have a question.
Mm.
In our notes, you have environmentalism, and you mentioned this earlier, Derek, about how this film, is huge. It helps that message. Avatar, Way of Water. I mean, even the first Avatar, but I feel like even again with Avatar, Way of Water coming out, what is this movie doing that is better or than what James Cameron did with Avatar? Have you seen Avatar, Derek?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay.
I think the second one's probably better than the first one. Um,
Agree.
Agreed.
I think that what this movie does that movie doesn't do is, especially the first Avatar movie, is incredibly simplistic. It's
Mhm.
just big bad dumb guys from Earth come, and one of them learns that, hey, nature good, and I'm gonna fight for nature. Whereas this is so much more complex because this is still a film that is saying nature is good and needs to be protected. But it's not just like, hey, the world at large is just coming to destroy everything. There can still be a way for these things to still live in harmony. Whereas Jake Sully gives up everything about
Yep.
his old life in the natural world and just kind of fully embraces this new reality that he lives in and just goes and lives in nature. This film does not end with Ashitaka deciding to go and live in nature. He's like, I'm still living in Irontown. I will help to rebuild. That's how it ends, with him promising to rebuild this civilization. But for that, the promise of this film to for that town to then live in harmony with nature in a way that it could not have before. And him and San having some kind of relationship where they are kind of almost stand-ins for, here's nature and here's like humanity, here's human civilization, and they're going to be in a romantic relationship, presumably, that is representative of the relationship that nature and humanity should have, whereas they're things that can work together in harmony rather than things that just need to be opposed, and that we just need to kick out all of, progress and everything. Because, like I said, James Cameron, obviously he loves nature and everything, but he still is flying around in $50,000 jets and
Right.
building these ships that can go down to the bottom of the sea and everything. And that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's exactly what
No,
this movie is saying.
I love that. I love that you say that, and I think we won't dig into Avatar too much, but I think that's always been my criticism is the character of Jake Sully.
Mm-hmm.
His motivations aren't really well defined. He decides to go one way, go another way, and he's never a character that's well thought out and really making decisions out of his own will, right? Whereas here you have Ashitaka, right? He stands for something. He's facing conflict, and like you said, he doesn't join one side or the other. There can be balance, and there can be a way for both oppositions to work together. I think another thing, and that I think hits differently than Avatar, is the fact that nature is personified in this movie, right? They're living beings that deserve respect and protection. Whereas in Avatar, you have Neytiri, who's kind of the voice and the reasoning behind the traditions and why we need to have respect for Pandora. But here, the spirit gods or the forest gods are literally there and having conversations, and they're talking about their struggles. They're talking about what's gonna happen if they all die.
I think the comment earlier is why I brought up this question is because to me, like this isn't like when you watch Avatar, it's like you watch this cinema CG marvel of a film, but then you have this like hammer of like colonialism and like environmentalism thing that's like hitting you in the face every single time you see other things. Is it beautiful? Cool, yeah. But this film is trying to depict more of a bigger universal truth, which is, will we be consumed by our desire for progress? Will we be consumed by our hatred? Will we be consumed by tradition? I mean, you think of like the spirit, like you said, like these. I mean, we have the spirit who's like this creature that comes in and helps out, and it like heals into Ashitaka, and then ends up trying to help provide an end for the boar. That at the end of the day, like the actual like animals, the wolves, the gorillas or monkeys, the boars, that they all have their own, they're doing the same sort of dealings that they're trying to manage that humans are dealing with.
Mhm.
To
Yeah.
like it's like it's not that like it's not like, you look at this, it's like, well, we don't want the sky people here, right? Here
Mhm.
it's just like, look, we just don't want to like not be able to communicate and like live our life. And they're take or for the gorillas, they're taking away our homes. um for San, it's like you know she's angry with the situation, um and wants to protect. She's a warrior. She wants to, that protection of something that is sacred to her and her family. To me, it's I find that like this movie, what Mononoke provides us is the ability to see a film that is beautiful, that's well told, that has interesting characters that we can everybody can kind of relate to.
Yeah.
But then we see one big thing at the end. It We have a healing factor, but the whole thing is not even like, I mean, like you said, Derek, earlier, like he has a selfless act. And I think to me, like it's a big act there, but like if we can think less of ourselves and help other people, just no matter who they are, that their eyes will no longer be clouded, and at the end of the day, we're gonna have a good laugh. We're gonna share a nice smile, have a good conversation. I think Lady Iboshi, she's like, well, I guess we'll rebuild, and what, this time I'm gonna do a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that.
What is, what more can you do?
Right? Yeah, it's perfect.
I know we're coming up on time, so I kind of want to ask you both, what is your favorite scene and why?
Yeah, this is hard. This is something I was thinking about a lot because to me, like the movie is just like a collection of every scene is just like incredible, and I could
Yeah.
literally say probably any scene in the movie. I already talked about the one where he is getting attacked by those horsemen, and it's so cool, but it's also just really visual. Does a really good job of visually establishing the themes of the film. But I think that yeah, that the last sequence when they're kind of running through the forest and that music, the incredible score by Joe. I never know how to pronounce his name, Hisashi. But he scores a lot of the Ghibli films. His that score, it's just so you just feel like you see all
Beautiful.
the Kodama, and they're just falling, and it's so dire, and you're just like, oh my gosh, we really you just want them to succeed and win, and everything is riding on this, and that they have already to an extent kind of lost because the forest spirit is dead, but that it ends with them giving it back and being like, the forest spirit isn't dead. He continues to live in nature and in all of us, and that sequence does everything I love about this movie. It is thrilling, it is emotionally resonant, and it is just really badass also.
Well said. Well said,
Thank you.
Derek.
Danny,
Oh, you want me to go? Okay.
go ahead.
To me, it's a way more subtle. I was thinking, I'm like, you know what? I was gonna maybe go with Ashitaka, Princess Mononoke, Eboshi, like conflict in Irontown. But you know what? I think it's truly the moment where Lady Eboshi is taking Ashitaka to go to see the garden. He's just, it's the, he's had dinner with the men, and he's kind of just sitting there, and he he's interacting with those men. The women show up, and then he walks past where the women are working. He sees their hard work that are actually providing what the real work to make everything work to get the iron. Goes to see Lady Boshi, who's just told him like, look, I'm trying to help these lepers, and or I've helped these lepers as much I can, and they're helping me by providing engineering and growth. And then he walks back, and he stops at the bellows, and he decides to come in and help them do this. And then starts to come in like probably some every one of us guys would do, is like, all right, I'm gonna do this, and like starts making the women like, whoa, what is happening here? But then giving him like, look, you're gonna, this is a, it's a marathon.
Hmm.
I don't know what it is about that scene because it feels very real. It feels very relatable, but also the subtext of Ashitaka, the way they drew his character, the way they animated his character as he walks. I mean, he's almost to the end on both accounts when he stops and
Yeah.
comes in. He like because I was like, is he gonna stop? Is he gonna stop? Oh, he's not gonna stop. Oh, he stops. But it's like towards like to me, I think it's like him that journey of like, will he make that? He's observing, and then he's like, you know what? I want to be involved. I don't know. It's just pretty great
Very
scene.
nice,
I
nice.
like that. I think for me, it is the scene of the conflict in Irontown when San and Lady Boshi are fighting. One, I think that's probably my favorite like action sequence of the movie. I
It's
don't
really
know.
good.
I just really love the animation in that as they're on the roof as she's coming in. Um, but more importantly, I think for me, it's Lady Eboshi is fighting with San. Ashitaka makes his way through, and he says something along the lines of like, "Hey, like, stay your hand. The girl's under my protection." Eboshi kind of laughs at him, something like, "I think she'll make a good wife for you."
Yeah.
But then, like, he starts like his
Curse.
curse starts kind of like revealing itself, and I wrote down what he says. He says, "Look, everyone, this is what hatred looks like.
Oh, yeah.
This is what it does when it catches hold of you. It's eating me alive, and very soon now it will kill me. Fear and anger only make it grow faster." And I love just like these leeches, symbiote venom leeches, that just represent and they're this metaphor for anger and hatred. And when he delivered that and in with the payoff at the end of the movie, I just love going back to that scene and how he just says, "This is what happens. You, Irontown, you, San, are allowing anger to consume you. For me, it's literally in this leech, but we have to stop, right?" And I
Mhm.
just love that message in the movie. I don't know if it's because it's like the political environment we live in and everything is just so whacked out, but it just stood out to me and I just love that theme there.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
that's that's really well said. It's perfect, and yeah, that's like right at the midpoint of the movie. So it's just like
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
giving you our thesis right now, going
Yeah.
forward. This is kind of like the zenith or the middle. Just everything is kind of centered around it. So yeah, that's perfect.
So cool.
Derek, what a great choice, man. I'm glad you chose this movie. I'm glad it wasn't Jurassic
I,
Park.
you know what I'm more glad about? I'm glad that we both had not seen it, and that
Yeah,
you run a podcast called Underrated. Even though I don't think this movie's underrated, and I never have, I just it's been on my list, and I was like, I'll get to it. I'll get to it.
yeah.
Um,
I'm so glad I
so
got to
think
introduce you guys both to it because that I was not expecting that. So that's rad. Like I love when I get to. I made all my friends. They had a showing of this at a local theater, our local art house theater, and I dragged a bunch of my friends to it. So I'm glad I'm making you. Hopefully some of I will also make some of the listeners listen to watch this movie
yes,
because
Yes.
it's so good. And if you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Watch it now.
Please do yourself a favor. Well, again, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. We would love it if you could subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to, as well as give us a 5-star rating since it helps us get discovered on the charts.
if you're listening on Spotify, at the bottom of the episode show notes, you can see various ways that you can interact with us via polls as well as a question. So be sure to check that out. If you're on YouTube, you can leave us a comment answering the question of the episode question of the day or of the episode, and then let us know what your thoughts are on Princess Mononoke. Why is it your favorite? Why you haven't seen it, and why you should when after watching it and you come back and watch this episode. Uh, what did we miss? You can always get in touch with us via email. You're at realchums.com or connect with us on Twitter and YouTube
And Instagram.
and Instagram at Real Chums, everywhere you find social. You can also follow me at Rubio_TV.
And myself on Twitter at Marstrosity, MarCtrosity. Derick, again, thank you for joining us. But
Thank
where
you.
can our listeners find you?
Yeah, like I was saying, check out the Underrated podcast. We're on all the same things: Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. Look up Undercast Company on Instagram, Undercast Co. on Twitter. If you want to see my personal Instagram, it's just Derick's Photos, DERICKS Photos. And then on Twitter, I'm at Derick McDuff. So yeah, Derick McDuff on Medium and all that good stuff as well. So yeah, would love for some of your lovely listeners to check some stuff out. Hopefully, I can give them some more underrated films. But if this is the only one I've given them, I'm very content.
Hey,
No, it's a great one. And again, if you haven't, please go check them out. It's a great podcast. You guys have a
Thank you.
great group. You guys bring up some great movies. I love recently you did James Bond. Tomorrow's Not Enough.
Oh, tomorrow never dies. Yeah, that was
Tomorrow Never
that
Dies.
was a fun
Oh my
episode.
gosh,
Yeah.
I've always said that one's my favorite. That one's my favorite Pierce Brosnan movie.
yeah.
Okay, very nice. Yeah.
But it was great having you guys revisit that one.
Yeah, that was fun. We had Trisha Aron from Beyond the Screenplay guested on that episode,
right.
so that was a really good one.
Awesome. Well, hey, join us next week. We're going to be discussing our first series, The Mandalorian.
Yep. Because we have to.
We have
You are contractually obligated, I think, at this point.
All right, guys. We'll see you guys in the next one.
later.
Thank you.